Yes, I think, step back. Our entire zoning code is a complete hodgepodge of special interests tucked in here and there, and it requires attorneys and specialists to get anything done in the city. I also think there's plenty we can do with rationalizing our zoning. We all talk about what we want to build where, and James mentioned all the different contributions from different developers. We have ongoing mitigation developments, mitigation discussions, and mitigation concerns. How about we get the zoning right so we get what we want where we want it? And we need to not do it in a rush. We have to do it in a thoughtful and respectful way. There are places where density can go, and Minka mentioned a couple. I may disagree with the Alewives overlay district. I think it's probably as built up as it could get. But I think there's density opportunities in North Point, there's density opportunities in Kendall Square with proper public transportation. Again, the red line is maxed out. We can't put more people there if we can't move them around. And then I also think we need to start looking at our open space. We keep talking about building. Pretty soon we're going to be out of open space. And last time I checked, open space in Lincoln doesn't count for people in Cambridge. We want to have pocket parks and community gardens in Cambridge. So one of the first orders I like to put in is to tell the people at Fawcett Oil to stop messing with the community garden. You agreed to sell it. Stop backing out on it just to get the zoning you want.
Community gardens. And the Whitmore Ave community garden, $1 million was in the works for Fawcett Oil, and then they pulled it off for the community gardens out there, and then they pulled it off the table when they weren't apparently satisfied with what they thought they were going to get. And finally, interrogate the whole foundation of a growth economy, which I think is missing. Build, build, build. Transit-oriented density. How about a little less density, a little less growth? Thank you.
Mr. Miller, do you support the comprehensive review of current regulations and proposed building regulations to enable greater sustainability?
Well, I see the answers to part A of your question, being very much part B as well. This is mostly a question of density. Density has to be handled neighborhood by neighborhood within the city. I don't think that we can have I cannot answer for you the appropriate level of density in the entire city. I think you have to look neighborhood by neighborhood. Now, there are certainly places in the city that can tolerate tighter housing. However, I do not wish to live in Manhattan. I don't think that most of us do. I'm having a tough time answering this fully, but I think that the question of density versus quality of life is clear. You can't have one without sacrificing the other.
Thank you. Mr. Stohlman, several studies have identified urban density as a necessary ingredient in creating more sustainable communities. Do you agree that Cambridge's density creates a sustainable advantage for the metropolitan region? And if so, what are your ideas for exploiting it?
Well, Cambridge is the second densest city in Massachusetts in terms of population per square mile, and it's the second densest city in Massachusetts in terms of dwelling units per square mile. So on the residential side, we are an incredible resource for the entire region because we have this incredibly dense residential side to it. We have to be careful within Cambridge, though, that we keep this good mix of residential and office density. A bad mix of residential and office density is going to lead to more cars coming into the city. If we increase our office density too much and don't keep that residential density up, then we're going to have more cars coming in Cambridge. So we already are a resource, and a great one, and we just have to be careful in our zoning in the future.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Urban living is not only the most environmentally sustainable, but it's also the most fun, the most vibrant. I mean, that's why we're all here. So I do talk about that quite a bit. There are several areas in Cambridge yet where we can build more housing. It's always close to nodes of public transportation. It's more vertical than flat because we need to make sure that we maintain as much pervious space as possible. The three areas that I talk about where we can have increased density are North Point, which is already on track to have density. Kendall Square needs to have more people living there. And the Alewife Overlay District, which is close to the Alewife near Neville Manor, across the street from there. And that's being rezoned to allow residential buildings to be built there. The other thing is, because it's more, makes more sense environmentally to rebuild rather than build new, I think, and I know this is not popular, but where it's possible to have basement units that have sufficient ventilation and light to have them be converted to housing, it makes sense. When they're close to public transportation, when the people who are renting it, no, they can't have a car.
So I think density can be. The issue is how we do all of the planning. So if we're living in a dense city, are we making sure that there's enough housing to sustain those who are here? Are there enough jobs to sustain those who actually want to live here? Is the public transportation adequate? I mean, all these issues are related. And then what we will continue to face as we see the benefits of density, there's also the trade-offs. The more dense you are, then you also have less open space sometimes, the need for more housing. And what we've seen since my decade on the city councils, there's often a real tension between these trade-offs. So while I actually believe living in a vibrant, I love living in a city. And I think that density can be a very positive thing in our lives. But we have to make sure that we are also building on those trade-offs and having sometimes what I think are tough conversations. One of the things that the city's currently doing right now is we've just started, I thought you were smiling at me earlier to measure time, is adaptation planning as well. Is what are the consequences and the impacts as we plan more particularly along the riverside, and making sure that while we are creating a dense, vibrant community, we also understand the consequences and sometimes the negative impacts on the environment. Thank you.